Hey guys, what's up? So we have a new update on Advanced Server and it's patch 1.7.26. First on our list is the buff on Minotaur. His rage points will no longer decay like this. As you can see, it's not disappearing like before. They also added a knock-up effect on his first skill. Enemies will be shortly knocked up inside the area. Same effect on his enhanced first skill. To balance these changes, they had to nerf his ultimate. The first two attacks on his ultimate can only slow the enemy. Only the last part can knock them airborne. And since you can keep your rage points, the ultimate now gives less rage. With these changes, you can chain knock up the enemy like this. But even without his ultimate, the new knock-up from his first skill is quite handy. It has a big area and it still has the slow effect like before. Next is Odette. They changed the way her ultimate is casted. Instead of starting with a dash, you will now cast the ultimate first before you can dash. The developer said it's a way to avoid enemies that are trying to cancel her ultimate. You can now double blink using Flicker just like this. So Odette means, do you like this change or is the old one better? Next is the nerf on Eve. Her ultimate now has a smaller area.
I see.
It's now harder to reach those enemies hiding behind their tower. To compensate for this nerf, they shortened her ultimate cooldown by 10 seconds. And they also added more damage to its tap version. Her first skill is also buffed with a higher damage. Is this enough to make up for the shortened range? Next is the buff on Martis. His second skill can now pass through walls like this. He is like Cho with Jeet Kune Do. Another buff is on his passive, where he gains extra physical attack when reaching full stacks. That's plus 200 physical attack at level 15. That's like having an extra item if you can maintain your passive. So that's extra attack speed and damage from his passive skill. Is this a game changer for Martis mains? Next is the buff on Hayabusa. His shadows now last longer, from 5 to now 6 seconds. I think that's a big buff with how he combines his shadow and ultimate. It opens up for more margin of error when performing his combo. But that's not all. They also added more damage on his ultimate in the early levels. Next is the buff on Terizla. Shorter cooldown on his second skill and higher damage on the first two attacks. This is like the pre-nerf version on official server. Is it enough to make him popular again? Next is the buff on Leomord. His passive skill is now back to its old form, where he can deal critical damage on enemies with below 50% HP. His second skill now has a shortened cooldown on its enhanced and normal version. And his ultimate now gives more defense stats, especially in the late game. This is good news for Leomord mains out there. Next is the buff on Harith. His second skill now gives more shield, and enhanced basic attack now has a higher attack scaling. Next is the buff on Zhask. His third skill is now faster to cast, and the clones will now spread like this. It's more focused in the middle part.
Creatures without antennae.
Next is the buff on Hylos. They lowered the maximum stacks of his second skill from 10 to 6. That's good because you will need shorter time to reach full stacks. And they adjusted the effects accordingly to match the new number of stacks. Next is Harley. His second skill cooldown is now shorter. To balance, they had to remove the movement speed buff on the skill, but they tested it several times and the movement buff is still there. Maybe they just forgot to remove it. Next is Johnson. His second skill now deals more damage on jungle creeps. The developer said they want to give him more flexibility. Are they trying to go for a jungler Johnson? Next is the buff on Aulus. His first skill can now be instantly activated like this. No more holding the skill. The damage part is also removed. His passive now adds stack every second after dealing damage like this. Previously, he had to do a basic attack to add 1 stack. Base damage was added to his enhanced basic attack. This means he can equip defense items because of the base damage. His second skill now has faster attack speed and higher heal. And his ultimate can now slow for a short time after casting. It's a way to hold the enemies while you finish the skill. Next is Fredrinn. He now has better damage to crystal energy ratio, but the bonus crystal damage on his ultimate is lowered by 5%. Next is the improved Mythic rank point algorithm. You'll now get more points when winning games. Last one is Ironman. Gushion. Based on the title, it's part of the Double 11 event where you can get epic skins using diamonds.
What?
Or maybe not. So what can you say about the update? Do you like the changes on Odette and Minotaur? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. That's all for this video. Stay safe and thank you for watching.